Hi everyone, and welcome to another Radults Bite, a short-form version of the Radults podcast that's published outside of our usual schedule to take the edge off your hunger for more inspiration. Today's guest is Dennis Lyxzén, frontman for the legendary Swedish hardcore band Refused. One of the most unique and influential bands of the modern era, Refused have had an enormous influence on the shape of modern punk and hardcore, and have played an equally large role in shaping my own personal journey, both as a person and as a musician. As the voice and most identifiable persona of Refused, Dennis has become an icon in our world, and it was a genuine thrill to get the chance to spend 15 minutes talking to him in the lead up to the release of their new album, War Music. Please note that we do experience some technical difficulties during this episode, but fight through it because it's well worth it, because this is a truly inspiring conversation. Dennis, welcome to Radults. How's existence treating you today?
It's fine. I have a bit of a cold, but apart from that, it's good. It's good. I can't complain.
You can't, but you did, nonetheless.
Well, it's a Swedish thing. It's like one of those things. Like complaining is a part of your life's blood. It's a part of what gives you energy. So it's like one of those things where you say, I shouldn't complain, and then you do. But I'm honestly I'm doing interviews because people are interested in music I create. So I shouldn't. My joke's a bit sore. That shouldn't really matter.
Now I must confess, I'm one of those people, and I have been an enormous fan of your band since I was a teenager. So thank you for the music of Refused, firstly, and thank you for being on my podcast. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me. It makes me happy that you want me.
Now, it's a pretty exciting time for Refused at the moment because you have a new album, War Music, that is set to drop this Friday. Are you feeling some nervous energy as you wait to see what people make of this record?
Yeah. It is. I mean, I've released a lot of records in my life, but there's something special about the Refused crowd. I would say they're very opinionated, so it's always interesting to see what people's take on things are. But yeah, you're always a bit nervous because I've been working on this super hard for the past 2 years, and then we're going to give it to the world, and we'll see what they think. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely an angrier record than the last one was, than Freedom was. It's got a lot more passion and intensity in it. It seems like that political fire, has been relit. What has inspired this level of vitriol?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. Like, I think that first of all, you look at the world and everything that goes on around us right now, and so the polarization of people and the rise of the right wing and populism and everything that's happening around you. That is, of course, a huge part of why you want to write a record that's this angry and to the point. I mean, and the other thing is that we did Freedom because we needed to sort of get a grasp on who we are and where we need to go. And I think that War Music is pretty much a reaction to what Freedom became. And I think Freedom was great. I think it had some amazing songs on it. It was a very bold and daring record. But I think that creating a record like that made us kind of aware of our sweet spot, if that makes sense, like that where we need to be as a band and where we're the most comfortable. So I think it's like this whole record is very much a reaction, partly to that, but also to just the way the world is right now.
It's interesting that you say that Freedom helped you discover where you sit best as a band, because I feel like the audience reaction to that record was quite varied. Some people loved it. Others were like, what the fuck is this? This is not the shape of punk to come. And I feel it's interesting that you have a kind of so-so relationship with the record as well.
Well, I don't think that, I mean, when I listen to it now, I think it sounds great. I think most of the songs are pretty awesome. But I also think that they were definitely trying things on that record that, it's an experiment. Every time you do stuff, or especially when we did Freedom, because it was so, we hadn't written songs together for a very long time. Like, you have to kind of test where do you want to go, what do you want to do next, sort of. So we're trying some stuff on Freedom that was interesting, but it wasn't really what we're all about, what we felt most comfortable with. And I think that when we started playing the songs from Freedom live, it was quite obvious. We were like, oh no, this is what we'd like to play, and also this is what resonates with the crowd. So I think that in any creative process, a record like Freedom, it was utterly necessary for us to make that record to be able to be where we are today. But yeah, it was a bit of a polarizing record. But it was also one of those deals where I think that with Shape of Punk to Come being the record that Shape of Punk to Come is, a lot of people lived with that record for 14, 15 years, So I don't think it really mattered what we would have done. I think we could have traveled to everyone's house and given them gold nuggets, and they still would be like, no, this is not the Shape of Punk to Come. And then if you would have made a record that was too much like Shape of Punk to Come, then people would be like, oh, this is too much. So it's like we were in a really tough position, and we felt that we had to create something to sort of reclaim the band. And I think Freedom definitely accomplished that. And I think now with War Music, people can compare War Music to Freedom and Shape of Punk to Come, not only Shape of Punk to Come.
So strangely, an album named Freedom gave you the freedom to make War Music.
Yeah. But yeah, of course. I mean, and I think that's the way it is. And I think that, like when you have the legacy of a record like Shape and the gap of 17 years, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're the exact same people that wrote Shape of Punk to Come. We're the exact same people that made that happen. But for us, it was like we had to sort of figure out what our role in Refused were, if that makes sense. Because I mean, when you don't write together for a long time, and when you don't create together, you have to figure out where you want to go with Refused. And I think that Freedom was a great record because it gave us a direction that ended up here. And I think that War Music it's a fantastic record.
Having heard it, I agree. It is fantastic. I was on a road trip today, and it's definitely driving music. So that's that's good to know.
Good. The driving test is important. You should never underestimate the power of what a record sounds like in a car. There is something about that's just fantastic.
Yeah, well, everyone was a dirty capitalist for that trip. You better believe me.
That's all right. That's what life is. It forces us to be things that we don't want to be, but that's just that's what life is in a capitalist society. There's nothing outside of it, but it's hard to.
So I think it's really interesting that people had the reaction they did to Freedom, and they're going to have the reaction they're going to have to War Music, because people hated the Shape of Punk to Come when it first came out as well. I mean, I didn't, but most people did.
Yeah, a lot of people did. And it was funny because, a lot of people in our surrounding and a lot of the people in the scene that we were part of, they did not take the Shape of Punk to Come at all when it came out. They were like, oh, this is super pretentious bullshit. And we're like, but it's a pretty good record.
Welcome back, Dennis.
I'm back. Yeah. So you were saying that when Shape of Punk to Come came out, people hated it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then it went on to establish this cult classic sentimentality with people. And to the point that when I saw you in 2012, there was people around me crying when you hit the stage.
That's pretty intense. Yeah, that's pretty intense.
So maybe these other records they become cult classics in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how much time I have to. I mean, it's funny because Shape of Punk to Come, it came out. People didn't really take to it. We broke up. And we did nothing for a long time, and then we came back together. I don't think I have the time to do another one of those, like another one of those. It's such a weird way of selling a record. So I rather have people liking more music right now than in 10 years.
That's an understandable position. Now, with your creative process, I'm particularly interested to how the process works for Refused in 2019 in comparison to how it worked for Refused in the early 90s. Do you find that having all the different bands has made you better songwriters?
Yeah, I think the process of being alive for a long time and creating tons of different music definitely helped Refused hone in on, as you said, the songwriting process of it. In the 90s, Refused was to a large extent like our first real band for all of us. And a lot of it we were learning as we were going, you learn by doing. But the sort of the pause that we had with the band, especially me and David, we just kept on writing and recording music and we're doing stuff. So I think that now, there's definitely a sort of a craftsmanship that we didn't have in the 90s. So you hope that the craftsmanship kind of adds up for the youthful energy that you have. Because when you're a young person, you a lot of it's just feeling, you go on feeling. And I think that as you grow older, like a little bit of that feeling get lost, but then you add other elements such as experience and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a different process, but it's also a different process because in the 90s we lived in our practice space. Like that's where you wrote the music, and nowadays there's a lot of demos being done at home and being sent over emails and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a different process. But then I still think with this record we managed to sort of harness that energy and make music that's very exciting, even though it started out as like a crappy MIDI demo, and then now it actually sounds like Refused could have sounded in the 90s. So I think that's a cool sort of way of working,
Okay, Dennis, well, we are going to get moved on pretty quickly, but I do want to know if, now that you have this profile, which is arguably larger than any other time in your career, do you feel more of a responsibility to continue to push the social messages that you do through the band? Do you feel like it's your job to scream about these things now?
Yeah, but I always felt that. And I always felt that was a huge part of what our identity as a band was. So I always felt that was important. But I think one of the things that happened is when Shape of Punk to Come became a big record, it was without us being involved in that. And a lot of people that discovered Shape of Punk to Come and discovered Refused later, they were not fully aware that we used to be like a super political hardcore band. So for a lot of people, we just became this rock band with, like New Noise or whatever. So I think for us now, it was very much an idea of saying, like, well, we're one of those bands that play Coachella and Primavera Sound or these huge festivals, but we need to show our roots and we need to show where we come from. And the political agenda is something that's been with me my entire life. And this time around, we just wanted to amplify it up to 11 because, well, partly because of the way the world looks, but partly also to show people like this is who we are. This is our background. This is something that the people that are writing a record like War Music, it's a super political, super abrasive record. We're the same people that wrote Shape of Punk to Come, And if you look at Shape of Punk to Come starts, the first line of the record is, I got a bone to pick with capitalism and a few breaks. That's who we were, and we want to just amplify that even more now and make people aware that this is important to us. Like these issues and these ideas is something that always fueled the band.
That's incredible, and the world definitely needs more bands doing exactly what you're doing, which leads me to my very final question before I let you go. If there was a bunch of kids in a room anywhere in the world right now, and they wanted to become the next Refused, or the first one of themselves, what would your piece of advice be to them?
Well, first of all, work hard. I mean, that's what it is. Like, you have to put in the hours. That's one of the things about being in a band. You have to put in the hours. And when you start off, you have an idea like, oh, we want to be this. And then when you start off, you copy. You know, like you look at other bands, like, oh, we want to be a band like that, which is a good way to start off. But I think one of the things is work hard and try to find your own thing. Like, what sets you apart from the herd? Like, what sets you apart, and what's unique about your vision and your ideas, and then just work for that. And also, in my mind, remember that the art, the music, is all that matters. Social media presence, fame, money, that doesn't matter. Like, the only thing that should matter is the art, and that's why you should do it. That's what I would say.
That's amazing advice. Thank you for being a guest today on Radults. Dennis, I would absolutely love to do a follow-up in the future, so perhaps when you make your way down to Australia next, we can have a full-length chat.
Yes, I would love that. Let's make that happen sometime next year, when we will for sure be in Australia.
Sounds amazing. Thank you very much. You are a certified Radult. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that brings to an end this Radults Rad Bite with Dennis Lyxzén from Refused. Refused's new album, War Music, drops on Friday the 18th of October, and we highly encourage you to check it out. If this has been your first time listening to Radults, we thank you for tuning in, and we trust that you'll enjoy making your way through the 22 episodes so far to listen to the inspiring stories of those who said fuck that to the idea that growing up mean giving up on their dreams and instead turn those dreams into their reality. Then you go outside and live life just a little bit more Radult. Have a rad day.